Alright everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be installing the left side of the upper and lower cabinets that we just built. So this was a little tricky because you can see here I have to remove the baseboard and then I have to modify the heat shields of the baseboard so that everything fits. And by now, if you guys have been following along, you recognize my oldest son. He comes with me on all the jobs. Once I remove everything, I bring it outside and I use a grinder and I trim it down to the size that I need and drop the baseboard down. I'm also going to modify the brackets, which I just did by cutting them in half with tin snips because I needed the coils of the baseboard to sit a little bit lower, but they also need to stay secure to the wall. Otherwise, in the wintertime, when the heat comes up, the baseboard will expand and contract and the pipes will vibrate and they'll make a clanging noise, and we don't want that to happen. So I just shortened the brackets, and you can see now I'm going to reinstall the heat shield, which is modified and cut smaller, and the brackets back to the wall. Once I get this done, then I'm going to flip the base unit over and I'm going to install some sheet metal on the bottom of the cabinets. Even though I hit them with a coat of polyurethane to protect the wood, I'm going to install these heat shields so that that heat can transfer out the front once I have the heating vents installed later on. I'm going to install the heating vents much later when the window seat and everything is in and the unit is completely installed. Whenever I'm delivering any cabinets, while I'm transporting them to the job site, I always like to wrap them in heavy-duty moving blankets and also shrink wrap. And what that does is it allows me to not only keep the doors closed as we do the transport, but it keeps the moving blanket in place because I do transport these in my trailer, and it keeps them from moving around and hitting into the walls while I have them shackled. If there's any movement or they're rubbing up against another cabinet, it just prevents damage and it stops me from having to do any extra work. So now I just mocked up the cabinet in place and I scribed a line along the baseboard exactly where it's going to sit. So now I'm using the multi-tool and I'm going to cut out that part of the baseboard. But once I cut that out and remove that part, I'm able to slide it right in, and it's just a really nice tight fit right up against where it has to be. You want to make sure when you remove the baseboard, you don't leave behind any residual caulking on the wall or any of the dust from the sheetrock that you might have caused when you ripped the piece out, because that can get in your way and actually screw up the way it sits plumb and flush against the wall. So now we're going to slide the unit into place and we're going to start to plumb it up and level it and put the shims in and screw it into the wall. And this is very important because if you level and plumb the base unit up 100%, then the top unit, when it gets installed, will be just perfect as you let it sit in there. All you're going to have to do is probably scribe it to a wall. But it should, once it sits on the bottom unit, since that's plumb and level, the top unit will fall right into place plumb and level. Now, originally I was going to leave this face frame detached, and then I was going to install it at the site because I was going to install the shims on the inside of the base unit and then cover it up with the face frame. But I decided against that because there's going to be a cove molding later on once we install those heating vents on the baseboard, just to get it perfectly flush to the floor. So I decided to install everything, and this way when I installed the cabinets it was all one unit and there would just be less on-site work. So I'm using a stud finder here to mark out the locations of the studs in the wall so that I can screw the cabinets into those studs and the shims through the nailers and spanners that we installed when we were making these cabinets. And if you haven't seen the video on how I made these cabinets, it's the rest of this series. This is the installation video, which was video number 6. The previous 5 videos in the cabinet building series goes step by step through the whole process of making these cabinets, so definitely make sure you check that out. Now to screw this into the wall, I'm just using 3.5-inch long GRK screws. You can find those in your local home center. And you want to make sure 3.5 inches is a good size because you want to go through the nailers, which are 19 millimeters. Then you have the shims behind there, and then there's also the sheetrock and then the studs. So you definitely want to make sure you use the right length screw so that you have something to bite into. You also want to make sure that you position your screws at the top of the base cabinets where no one's going to see them. There's nothing worse than someone opening the cabinet door, looking inside and seeing a screw through the bottom nailer of the cabinet, and it's totally exposed. You don't want that, so make sure you keep them up high so that even when someone bends down, they really have to get down low and look upwards on the inside of the base units to see those screws. Now, the way I used to remove the shims and cut them flush with the base units was take a carpet knife or a box cutter and score them about 90 times before I could actually break them off even. But I started using the multi-tool, and it just takes a couple of seconds, and it's much quicker. And you can see my son there with the vacuum cleaning up as we go, and it just, makes the job not only neater, but it's just more professional. Now the big unveiling of the upper unit. It wasn't as heavy as it looks. It was just more awkward because it was kind of wide. But you're going to see here, I'm going to have to scribe this to the wall because there was a really big hump in the sheetrock. This is one of the main reasons why you always have to build an overhang on your face frames when you're making cabinets. So I'll explain this whole process right now.
Okay, so in this corner here, the wall is really out of plumb. The bottom was good, but this goes outwards this way. So we're going to have to scribe it to the wall to make it fit perfectly in there. So what I'm going to do is I measure the gap on this side here and also the overhang, and it's 10 millimeters. So I'm just going to set my scribe to 10 millimeters. And then I'm going to run it along the wall here. And what that's going to do is, as I run this along the wall, it's going to give me the pencil mark where I have to cut. And you'll see it disappear as I get to the bottom. And right there, you see how it tapers off, comes from the top. So once I take this down and I cut that off, we'll be able to slide this whole thing and it'll take up that gap right there.
You can cut this piece with a jigsaw, but I'm choosing to use the track saw because it's more accurate, it's quicker, and then I could just always touch it up a little bit with the block plane if I need to really get closer to the line. You could always use a restoration tool with the drum sander attachment on it.
Get it back more. Back more? Yeah. It's against the wall. Okay, got it.
And now I'm just attaching the upper unit to the wall the same way I did the base cabinets with the 3.5-inch screws into the studs through the nailers and spanners of the cabinets. And now I'll just attach the top and the bottom with 1.25-inch screws through the spanners from the bottom into the top, and that'll be concealed. And now we're really getting ready to wrap this up here, so I'm installing the shelves back into the unit. These are the adjustable shelves. The pins are in there in certain locations. Usually I find that when you put adjustable shelves into a cabinet or a built-in, wherever you put it, the client always leaves it there, so I'm choosing the best location.
Okay guys, so just a quick look here. I'm going to show you a couple of things so you can see. This is perfectly level with the top of the window, and that was done for a reason, and I'll explain all of that as I go. Jack, shut that light off, it's too bright. Yeah, it's better. All right guys, I made it a little less bright. Okay, so I'm not going to scribe the back here. There's a 10 millimeter gap between the wall and the back. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because up here it's perfectly level and flush. Everything is completely coplanar with this window, which is the way they want it. But there's going to be a crown molding wrapped around the top here. But I'm also going to be doing a shaker style panel that's going to be above the window seat, and it's going to go all the way flush to the top. And then what I'm going to do when I wrap around the crown molding, I'm going to cut a little notch so it'll hit that panel and then go back all the way to the wall. And that's going to completely cover up this whole gap. This gap here is only 10 millimeters away from the wall, and I'm working with 19 millimeter panels. So that's going to completely cover that up. So there's no need to scribe that at all. So let me just show you something over here. The part that we scribed to the wall, you can see how that fit perfect. So now I have no more gap there all the way down. It's completely perfect. We have all our shelves installed. It's looking really good. Now the baseboard, I put a piece of metal behind there. We trimmed down the old baseboard heat shield from the back so that this way it keeps it off, the heat off of the sheetrock. I put the sheet metal underneath the bottom there, and when we're all done and the window seat is installed on this part here, I'm going to cut out the vent holes for the bottom there, and this way the heat can escape. And since we put that sheet metal there, it's going to radiate it all the way out. I also put a coat of polyurethane on the bottom of that as well, so that's going to protect the wood itself from the heat. I was lucky enough that the clients let me film in the house. I tried to narrate as best I could because I wanted to get the job done. So you can see here all the doors with the soft close hinges, and we have all of our adjustable shelves installed. Soft close feature is really nice, and the hardware is going to be installed later. They're going to choose the hardware. I don't know, whatever they want. I'll come back and install it for them when they figure it out. But as of right now, this part of the job is finished. I have to get started on the window seat, and if you saw in the previous clip that I just showed you, the window seat is going to be massive. We're going to be doing doors all along the bottom, so this way the underneath is all storage too. All right, so I'm going to measure up for that, and we're going to get started on that in a separate video. All right, guys, so that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the picture of a notification bell. That'll notify you every time I upload a new video. And give the video a thumbs up if you liked it and you learned something. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me on the job site.